Hello, table tennis fans. It's me back again for another Pongcast. With so many of you guys coming out, 30 plus players a night, it's like impossible to talk to everybody apart from saying hello. So I wanted to share with you some of the things that have been going on, some of the discussions I've had with other players, questions, answers, etc. I'll let you know first off that I had a bad back since last Tuesday. So it's been a week now. After doing some weeding, I just got a slipped disc in my back. So made a really difficult time moving about. And it's almost better now. I'd say it's probably half as bad as it was. So this kind of, it's weird because it affects me sitting down and getting up from sitting down, laying down, getting up. That's always a problem when this happens. But standing for a long period of time, it actually feels better, and I can do a lot more things. It's just bending over or getting up or from sitting down, it's just terrible. So this weekend when we had our USATT tournament, one of the under 1,000 players didn't show up. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, we either play that group as a group of 3, or I can jump in there and try it. So I'm thinking, should I really do that with a bad back? And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I jumped in there. Yeah, it was tough. I don't think it affected my play too much, but going to retrieve a ball after it landed on the ground, that was tough. But hopefully, maybe it affected my play because I didn't do so well in this tournament. We'll see what happens if it happens again. But anyway, let's talk about tournaments. So in this tournament, I want to make it clear to everybody, when you're in a tournament, you want to record your scores accurately. The main reason for this is if there's a tie. So we actually had 6 groups, 6 events, 3 of which had a 3-way tie for second place in their groups. And how this was resolved was you go down to match points. So you count up 2 points for a match won, 1 for a match lost, and 0 for incomplete. So that's kind of like if someone defaulted or didn't play a match, they're kind of eliminated from that first round of 3-way ties. The next stage is you count up wins of the players versus their losses of games. And this is only between the players who are tied. So say you have 4 players, 3 of them are tied. We eliminate all the games that were played against that top player. So it's just those 3 that are in consideration. So it's a ratio. So wins to losses. So if you won 4 matches, lost 4 matches, then your ratio is 1. So that is the first step in determining who will go on. So if you won more matches than you lost, that's great. You will probably end up getting out of that 3-way tie. If that doesn't work, then they add up the points. So the number of points you won versus the number of points you lost. Those are all added up, and that ratio is taken into account. So in 2 of these 3-way ties, that had to take place. So every point matters in a tournament. So just remember that. Also, writing down the scores is important on those clipboards. Make sure you get it correct. We did have one instance where a match was recorded backwards. So the player that lost when we submitted the results ended up being the player that won. And so we had to send in a correction to them. So that's another thing that could affect your ratings. And it's not always caught. So they caught this one early, so we're going to get that fixed. But that could affect your rating too. All right. So the question is, why do we have tournaments? Why do I hold the tournaments? Why do Brady and I work together in Janelle to have these taking place? The main reason I do it is to give club players the opportunity to be involved in a tournament. Many aren't ready to travel or to I don't say embarrassed, but maybe like it's intimidating to say, oh, I'm going to go to a tournament in New Jersey and participate there when you haven't been in one before, you don't know how it works. And are you going to put the time into travel? Is it worth it? So it's kind of like I want to bring a tournament, official tournament, to the area so that people who normally wouldn't compete can get a taste of it and see what it's like. And the second thing is it brings out players from other areas. So then we can bring other players will come in to compete from New Jersey or Maryland or Delaware and say, okay, I'm going to compete in this area. And that gives our players a chance to play other styles and people they've never played before. And that's always fun. Do we do it to make money? No, we don't. So that's one of the things that I am not good at with running the table tennis club, and that is making money. I don't see that as why we're together, or I don't see this as a job, or something of, oh no, we have to make some funds. So part of running the tournament is making sure we don't lose money. So one, we have to pay for the facility to rent it. So to make sure we're guaranteed a spot to play our tournament, we have to put up a certain amount of money. Then we have to pay a fee to run the tournament. Then we have to buy the trophies. We have to calculate the award money, the money for the top place finishers if we're going to give money out. And then we calculate, okay, how many people can we accommodate in the time that we're running it? So that limits how much we'll make and how much should we charge for each event. So it's not too expensive and it's not going to be causing us having a negative cash flow. So it's complicated. There's lots of things going involved with that. But the main thing is I want to give this opportunity to players of our community to get involved and have this experience without losing money and to make it valuable to the players. So that's my goal there. Keep it affordable, get you the experience, don't lose money. So that's the reasons why we hold a tournament. At least those are my reasons for why we're holding a tournament. Because Princeton has them every month. And they are a well-oiled machine. They're constantly running them. They have the prizes. They have the facilities. We do it just to accommodate our local players. When we think about that, the whole club is not a money-making machine. So I kind of think of the club as our local community group, our social group, a street gang even. So we're just a collection of players looking for a place to play and looking for that opportunity. Utilizing whatever means we can, and we're not looking to make money. We're just looking to survive and have a place to play. So that's my mindset on the club. So every once in a while I'll have people come up, well, are we making money? Are we doing this? Why don't you have this event and you can charge people this amount of money and then give half to them and half to the club? And I say, yeah, that's something we can do, but it's not something I think we need to do. I like having the tournaments to be as easy to enter as possible because I want to get people involved and them to see, this is something we want to do, and then they can push to say, okay, can we do this kind of event, or can we have maybe hold their own events at work, or maybe we're not the ideal location for them. Maybe one day they'll say, okay, we're going to open up a club here, or we're going to try and organize play here in our town. That's what I want to try and promote and foster with the club. So, leagues, mini tournaments, things like that are ways to make money, but it's not the reason why I want to do them. I want to bring in these things as ways to engage players, to give them a goal, to give them something to work towards. So there are a lot of big clubs out there that are the money-making clubs. There are official clubs. They're trying to build competition, trying to build Olympic-level players. And we're just not that because we don't have the time involved. So we're only there twice a week. So that's not really enough time to train to become a higher-level player. So we can't provide that kind of structure and training to do that. So our main focus is getting people involved and getting them playtime. So I'm always looking for new ideas in how we can do this. So I like the Battle of the Ages and the Battle of the Counties, and I like the Greatest of Phoenixville and the Greatest of Chessmont. I think those are all fun to run, and I think everybody enjoys those. But if there's something else you want to come up with, your own idea of a mini tournament or leagues, etc., like, I'm always open to comments. But if you have an idea and you say, well, let's do this, and you want to take the reins and say, okay, I'm going to organize this, or I'm going to try and develop this, then that's even better. So you can talk to me about that, and I can try and help you with that. But don't be offended if I don't always take your suggestions. It's just that I gotta do what fits with me and what I think will work. But I definitely help someone who's going to try and spearhead their own ideas. We did have I had a few discussions. Okay, I had one discussion at the tournament about the benefits and the disadvantages to using tournament software like OmniPong. There's another one that's out there. It's called Stadium. And so I don't know anything about Stadium, but I know OmniPong does have some issues sometimes. It's not a very easy to use software, and it doesn't come with a manual. And the person who wrote it and maintains it, he's a nice enough guy, because I've talked to him on the phone. I talked to him through video to try and solve some problems we had with it early on. And he's very responsive if you call him. But if you email him, if you don't want to take the time to go one-on-one with him on the phone, he's very difficult to reach and talk to. You won't get responses out of him, and there's just no documentation on how things are. So a lot of stuff I had to figure out on my own, or ask for help from people who already are using the software. Anyway, so we did have some discrepancies with the draws at our tournament. And because there's no documentation, I can't tell if it's because of our way of trying to reseed the draws based on location, and if a player has already played another player in the previous event. Those are ways you can move players around. But I did some testing, and it doesn't seem to be the reason. So we're not sure why the seeding wasn't correct. So it did put one player, or maybe even a couple players, at a disadvantage, because it didn't seed them as a proper, if you go by the book. It didn't seed them properly. But that's all up to interpretation too, because the tournament director gets to decide who plays when and where. But you want to make it as fair as possible, one, with the ratings. So you want to put the highest players in different groups, but you also want to try and avoid players from the same club playing against each other in the same group before getting out of the round robin. And you also want to avoid matches that are duplicates already played at the tournament. So those are things that go into determining that. So the idea was maybe Stadium is better. Maybe Stadium is supported a little better by the person who's producing it. And I don't know about that, but it was kind of like the discussion then changed to one of the USATT is catering their money spending to Olympics, high level players, and not really funneling down to the grassroots clubs. And I had a few other people in the past have discussed this with me, and I understand that, but I don't look at that too closely, because again, I'm not in it for the money. I'm not thinking how can we get more funds, how can we get sponsorships, things like that. I'm not that person. But what was also discussed is there was trying to copy the rating system. So we're going to use the similar rating system to USATT. So you have a reason people are going to say, okay, we'll get our ratings through this system rather than this system. And I started thinking, well, if you're going to do that, why duplicate it? And I started thinking, well, what do other countries do? I looked at Canada, for example, and they have ratings that are a rating system. It's similar to USATT, but they're tiered. So for example, if you're in a 4-star event, the ratings exchange between players is different from a 1-star event. So they're using similar numbers, but how those ratings are changed depends on the event as well. So that was kind of interesting. I tried to look at the UK, and they don't seem to have a rating system at all. It all seems to be down to ranking systems. And ranking systems not only are based on how well you perform, but also how often you play. So that's kind of interesting, is you don't really get a relative rating comparing players that way. You get a rating based on, well, how often do they play and how well do they play. So it's kind of like a picture of today, or a picture of the last 6 months, or a picture of last year. And then after that, people fade away who aren't playing anymore. So that's an interesting way to do it. And you see World Table Tennis does that now too. It's based on points won per tournament to give you a ranking. So there's all different ways of doing it. And the bottom line is, I think if you're going to do a different rating system than the USATT, then it should be different. You should be completely different. So I would say, if I were to make it obviously different, let's start at 1,000. So 1,000 would be the lowest level, going up to maybe 5,000. So you base your ratings points and your rankings on that. So make, when you win a tournament, plus 100, minus 100, and change it from there. So your rating system is useful in its own context, but it's also a completely different scale. So that's how I would see going forward with that idea. It's, if you were to create a new rating system. And we tried that at the club. I tried to come up with some ideas. Ours was color-coded, and there's another one. Pittsburgh uses a star system. So there's all different ways you can do it. And you just have to get your player base to be on board with it, and to understand it, and to get used to it. So you have to use it in order to get it going. All right, I came across a video today. I went to Table Tennis Daily, their website, their forums, and there was a video by Hemming Hugh talking about table tennis rubbers. And he's basically saying that, and in his opinion, it's always start with the fastest, most powerful rubber that can do speed and spin, and then adapt to it. But he's also boosting it. So what do you have here? You have a situation where you're choosing a rubber that is probably the most expensive. You're going to perform a boosting of it every so often, probably changing it more often. So what we have here is, okay, you're going with the fastest, spinniest rubber, and you're going to do high maintenance, and you're going to pay a lot of money. So to me, this is great if you have lots of money and you don't care. But his video is kind of interesting because it goes back and forth between the reasons to use that kind of rubber and the reasons why other rubbers are not effective or not good. So it's he kind of goes back and forth, I'd say, but maintaining that the faster rubbers are better. And that made me think about Larry Hodges. If you know, he's got a website, a table tennis coach. He does a blog every Monday, or once a week he does a blog, and brings news and things like that. But he never talks about equipment. It's one of those things he just doesn't want to discuss. And there's basically no consensus anywhere about whether you should use a slower rubber, meaning that it's going to rebound faster. A stickier rubber means it's going to catch on the ball faster and grip it. There's no consensus out there. It's all the top players, all the top coaches. You're going to get a differing opinion from everybody. So there's no consensus. So what I like to tell people is, what I see, my opinion, here's my opinion. When you're dealing with a expensive rubber, that has a lot of kick to it, where the ball's going to come right off real fast, like it's a thick sponge, it's a bouncy sponge. Or if you're dealing with a very sticky rubber, the ball's going to react very quickly off of that. And if you're hitting the ball, or if you're trying to do a loop, that is a lot easier to change your stroke. So if you hit it really hard, or you hit it less hard, you hit it. The differences in how hard you hit a ball, or how fast you swing, are easy to make changes to. So say you have a slow rubber, then you adapt according to that. You hit harder, you hit faster. You have a quicker rubber, then you hit slower. But where the big difference comes in is the short game. So someone gives you a short ball and you have to push it. It's going to be a lot harder to attenuate the change in your touch in getting a ball over softly. You just want to push it back. I think the degree of change that you have to make is a lot harder to make with a faster rubber than it is a slower rubber, or rubber that doesn't bounce as fast. So that game is much more difficult, in my opinion, than dealing with a topspin or a hitting rally. So that's where I think that a slower rubber, a less bouncy rubber, will help you. And you can get that short game, that slow touch game down a lot easier, and it's less of a problem getting the topspin and the hitting game into gear. So that's why I think softer, less bouncy, slower rubber is good for most recreation players, most low-level tournament players. I don't think the high-end stuff is necessary. And then, of course, it tends to be less expensive, and you don't have to change it as often. And that's one of the reasons I don't like to use sticky Chinese rubbers, because that tack on the sticky rubbers tends to wear off quickly and at a different rate than if you just get a grippy rubber, which doesn't have a lot of tack on it. Those seem to last longer, and so that saves you money, and you don't have to adapt your game as often as the tack wears off on a sticky rubber. So my suggestion, get something that isn't too fast, something that isn't too tacky, that isn't too expensive. That's my take on it. That's all I have written on my notes here. I wish I could talk to all of you every time we come out and play, but we only have a limited amount of time, and everybody's playing, and I only get to field these questions and talk about these things a little bit. So if you have any questions, shoot me a message, and we'll talk about it in the next podcast or at the club. See you later.